So I've had this TV since I bought it, I don't know when, maybe 2007, 8 probably, and it was lightning struck, so it's not starting anymore. We can hear the relay clicking, but it does not come on. So my point on this video will be to try and fix it, although I think it's a lost mission, but I will try it anyway. So let's proceed to removing all the screws. With all the screws removed, we take off the foot for the TV that holds it standing, and we remove the power plug connector, which we need to press on the sides and pull out. It's a little stiff as it was never opened before, so we need to pry it a little bit until it comes out. We will now remove the back cover. It's metal, so it's fairly easy to pull out to reveal the power supply, the motherboard and the T-con. Firstly, let's check the fuses on the motherboard to see if they all are working as they should. Let's see if these big caps have anything on them, so we know if we are safe to work. Voltage DC, and we have 2 volts, 100 volts and 100 volts. Again, 2 volts on this one. Let's check this fuse. I will need to change this for continuity before it does anything. There we go. And it's working. And the other one, it's also working. So let's do one quick test to see if we have a problem on our power supply or on our motherboard. To do that, we just need to remove the cable that goes from this power supply into the motherboard. If we now try to turn it on, the light will come on. So this means that our power supply is working as it should. So as you can see the light here, so our problem is most likely on the motherboard. Let's just check some voltages. Here we are live, so if you do this, be careful so you don't get shocked. So we have 3 volts on this line and 15 here. 3 volts on the 100, 100s, 41, 100. So yes, the power supply is supplying power to the motherboard. So that one is okay. So let's plug it back in and run some tests on this motherboard. Let's disconnect the cables. So what happened here was that the lightning struck, it burned out the box that was connected on the HDMI, and the box was also burned out because it stopped showing a picture even on another TV. So what I think it happened was that the lightning struck, burned out the box for the channels and came through the HDMI and burned the main chip, which is this one here. and it did not go through to the power supply. So basically HDMI killed this little chip, which is the HDMI IC, and then burned out this chip over here and eventually this one. So this is my theory. So the only thing we are left to do is check for shorts. Let's go through all the chips and see if we manage to find any capacitor that is shorted to ground, that we can then identify a chip where it's connected to, so we can go from there. Unfortunately, on this side I have not seen any. Let's see on the other side of the board to see if we can find any shorts on this part. So here, as you can see, it's beeping on both sides of this capacitor, so we have a short over here. Let's try to identify any more caps that are shorted to ground, or if it's just this one. If it's just one, it means only one line of the chip on the other side is damaged. So yeah, this is the one that has the short. Let's now see what is on the other side. And on the other side we have the HDMI IC. So yeah, we need to check this little chip and see what it is. It's a silicon image. So I need to search where to find this, probably only from China, but I'll try to source it out. Let's go ahead and keep on our search for more SMD capacitors that may be shorted to ground. And here we have another one. Let's take a look on what's on the other side. So it's this chip over here. Not sure what that does exactly. But yes, the cap is just under it. And this is our little guy. I need to search what this does as well and see if we can replace it. So now let's do a quick test and remove that first cap that was shorted to see if the short goes away and if we only have one cap that is bad or the entire chip. So I'm heating up the area at around 350 degrees Celsius until we have the solder liquefied so we can remove this cap. I'm adding a little bit more flux because it's not easy and added a bit more temperature, now 400 degrees, and it did the job. So now we need to let the area cool a bit and check if the short is on the pads or on the cap. So let's test the cap, and the cap is okay because it's not doing a short by itself, only in circuit. Let's test the circuit, and yes, we still have a short. So let's put the cap back in place because this is not our problem. So since we figured that the cap is not a problem, let's take the chip out and see if after removing the chip we still have a short on that area or not. So I have placed the heat gun at around 400 degrees Celsius so we can then remove this chip. So with the chip removed, let's now check the cap that we had a short on to see if it still has a short or not. So let's go to continuity and check if the cap still has a short. And as you can see, it does not have a short because we don't have the shorted chip on the other side. Let's quickly check the other chip that we found a short on and see if the caps under it are still shorted or if they are from the same line from that chip that we removed. And as you can see, we do no longer have a short. So we found at least part of our fault or our entire fault, which is the HDMI controller. So let's do a quick test to see if without the chip the TV starts up and stops doing that click noise. Plugged in, let's press the power button, and yes, we heard the chime that it usually starts with, so it means that at least that chip is probably our fault. If not the chip, probably the entire board, but let's continue our search. So a week has gone by and I managed to buy one chip to put in place of the other one that is supposedly shorted. So let's get straight into it. Let's add some flux to the pads over here. So with the flux placed, let's put a little bit of leaded solder on the pads so we can then clean them. With all the pads leaded, let's use some solder braid to remove this solder from the pads and have them cleaned. And the brand new chip, we will need to tin all its legs. To do that, we also need to add some flux around the chip, just like so. With the flux in place, let's now pass our iron also with leaded solder, just like this, so we can tin our little pads so that the chip will adhere to the motherboard properly. So I just seen that one of the resistors is lifted. This was probably when I removed the chip and I did not notice it. So now we will just need to heat it up and put it back in place before we continue with the procedure of installing a new chip. Back in place, let's now tin our pads with fresh solder. We will now heat up with hot air station at around 350 degrees this area. We will now add a bit of flux. We keep on warming it, and now we insert our chip. Make sure that the chip has the number 1 pin on that little white arrow. And let's put it more or less where it will rest and keep heating until it bends with the board. So with the chip fully in place, we will now clean the area while it's hot with our cotton swab. There are a couple of pads that are not connected properly, so let's add a bit of flux, and with our hot iron we will pass a little bit of solder throughout this area so we can then fixate this chip properly. Just going to quickly check for any bridges that might have been left behind. There are indeed a couple of bridges, so let's take a closer look, with our microscope to check if we can undo those bridges. And I think I just made a newbie mistake over here, where I've placed the number 1 pin on the wrong side, because this chip has 2 dots, as you can see, so I'll need to turn it around. I did already over here off camera, because you've seen me taking the chip out. So pin number 1 is the small circle and not the big circle. So with the chip back in place, we can now test our TV and see if we manage to sort this thing out and fix it. So let's now put the plug in and see what happens. Unfortunately, it still has a short. It is doing exactly the same thing that it did. We can hear the relay clicking, but no life whatsoever from the TV. So my conclusion is that most likely the lightning struck through the HDMI and traveled on these traces all the way to the main chip. So unfortunately I wasn't able to fix my old TV, and it will be scrapped because a new board will cost me 100 and something euros, and a new TV will be about the same, and it's already a smart TV. So it's pointless to fix, unfortunately, but we will have probably to use this board as spares to remove some resistors and stuff like that. And this is the chip that was burnt. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.